Hello students, welcome back to our science class. My name is Anjali and today we are going to study chapter 12 class 8 science. So students, let's begin. I hope you all are fine and safe at your places and doing good. Yes, very good students. So now I'm going to show you few images. What you have to do is you have to see that what is happening in all these images. Yes, in the first what you see? Yes, there is a ball which is rolling on the ground. You can see the ball is, it seems like rolling on the ground. In the second, yes, the person is holding the bottle with his or her hand. And in the skating, is going on ice skating. And in the fourth, the skating on the wheels. So, students, what do you think that what is making all these actions come into the consideration, like the movement of the ball on the floor, the we are holding the bottle with our hands, like, and the skating on the ice or the ground with the wheels. Yes, there must be some kind of force, you can say force is involved over here. Okay, very good. Now students, let's think about this situation that a notebook is kept like this previously, and the person is, it moved slightly towards this side, right? And the second, it, the person, another person moved it from, by pushing it in the this direction. So students, what do you think, the notebook will stop after some time or it will keep on moving? Yes, it will stop. Very good. And here, if a ball is rolling on the ground, will it stop after a point of time or it will keep on moving? Yes, the ball will stop eventually, and we are able to hold the bottle with our hands, or we are able to do the skating. So students, what do you think that in this second image also, that the notebook will also stop? These all are the actions responsible due to some kind of force or not? Yes. So if the book is sliding for short period of time and it will stop, similarly the ball will stop, and we are able to hold the bottle also. So do you think that something is involved which is making us to do all these things? Yes, very good students. So yes, there is a force which is opposing, we can say in this case it is opposing the motion of this notebook, which is eventually stopping it after some time, right? And we are able to do the ice skating and the skating due to the rollers which are there. So some kind of, yes, possibility is there that a force which is a kind of friction, students, it is involved there, due to which the things are happening. So students, today we are going to discuss about the friction. And this idea of friction you already have when we have discussed chapter 11, right? There we have discussed the force of friction. So this was the basic idea. And students, what is basically friction if I ask you? Yes, friction is the force which is opposing the motion of any object, right? When an object is moving, like a ball is rolling on the ground, so it will stop after a point of time. So some kind of force is acting from the opposite direction, which is making the ball to stop. Yes, very good. So there we can say that the friction is involved. So students, if we apply the force along the left, the friction along the right in this case, you can see we are applying the force to the left of this object, so the friction will be occurring from the right of this object. Like we have this notebook kept, we are applying the force from this side, so the friction will be acting from the opposite side. This we already know that friction is the opposing motion. Or if we are doing inversely, like we are applying from the right side the force, so the friction will be occurring from the left side, right? So if we apply the force along the right, the friction will be left side. So in both the cases, what is happening? The force is opposing the motion of the book. This frictional force is opposing the motion of the book when it is moving. So we can say that the friction is a type of force which always opposes the applied force. Whatever force we are applying, it will always oppose it. So now students, if I ask you to list few examples of friction from your daily lives, then what will you say? Yes, very good. You can mention it in the comment section also. So students, when we, if I ask you that when we walk on the ground, right? What our shoes are doing? They are moving, we are moving in the forward direction, right? Yes. So what do you think? Any opposing direction is also being applied on our shoes, like we are moving? Like you can think, yes. So we are moving in the forward direction. So what force is there which will always act on the opposite direction? Yes, that is the friction. If friction is there, then only we are able to work on the ground. If we are applying the force in this direction, friction will oppose the motion. So in this way, we are able to walk on the ground. Like simultaneous process is going on. Right, students? Very good. And what else examples you can give? Yes, when we slide something, like when we hit the pen on the table. So what will happen? Yes, it will eventually be coming to a halt, or we can say stop. Why? Because there is a force which is opposing the motion of the friction where we are trying to make the move pen forward, but some kind of force is there which is opposing it. So what is actually involved? Yes, it is involving the force of friction. Very good, students. So meanwhile you can note down these important points in your notebooks, and then we will proceed further then. Yes, I hope you all are done. Very good, students. So now it's time for you to answer as choose the correct option. You can write your answer as A, B, C in the comment section. That if we apply the force along the left, friction acts along the A, left only, B, right, or C, at the center. And then we have to explain a bit while writing this statement that why do you think it is acting along that direction. Yes, very good, students. So you, if you have given the answer as B, which is right, friction acts along the right. That is the correct option. Why? Yes, because we always know that friction always opposes the motion of the object, which is in the direction of force we are applying is the left. But what friction will do? It will act along the right then, which is the opposite of left. So in this way, the B option, which is correct, right. So now, students, you just have to observe something. I'm going to share a video with you in which some kind of thing is happening. Okay, you have to just observe it. Just a second, students, it's getting started.
String balance of 5 layers. Take the string balance. Attach the string balance to the wooden block. Hold it exactly horizontal to the table for viewing the reading of the string balance.
So students, what have you observed? What just happened? Yes, very good. There was a wooden plank, right? And what did we attach to that wooden plank? Yes, a spring balance. Spring balance basically to measure that how much force is acting on that wooden block if we are pulling it with the help of spring balance, right? So what did you notice? Yes, that there was some amount of force which is due to which it is acting upon the wooden plank. We are pulling it out, right? So suppose the force is, let's say, 10 Newton, which you have already studied. The unit is Newton of the force. So now if I ask you that I cover this wooden plank with the polythene sheet. So what do you think that after covering it with the polythene sheet, the wooden plank, will it be easier for us to move it? Yes, definitely it will be easier for us to move in the case of when polythene is applied on that wooden plank, right? So students, now basically what we are going to do, we are going to discuss about some of the factors which affect the friction. Now we are going to study about the factors affecting the friction. What are those few factors? As one you have already seen. So basically students, you can see that the nature of the surface also, like the smoothness or the roughness, it affects the friction. So what do you think the friction will be more in case of what? When we attach the polythene, cover the brick with the polythene, or when it is like this only, the normal roughness? Yes. So the friction will be less in case when we are attaching the polythene with that wooden plank and then we are pulling it out, right? So in this case, we can say that the friction will be less. So now the surface has become smooth after we applied a polythene to it, right? So this surface has become smooth or not? Yes, smooth. Yes. And the roughness surface, it was earlier when there was no polythene. The wooden plank was like this only. So this is actually representing the polythene, okay? So when there was no polythene, the surface was kind of rough. So here we can say that the friction will be more. It will oppose the more. The motion, it will oppose the motion with the more force. So students, first is the roughness or smoothness, which we are discussing some factor that smooth surfaces have the lesser irregularities. There are less irregularities in the smooth surfaces, and the lesser the irregularities will be there, the lesser the tendency to lock that object will be there. So if one object is there like which is very smooth, and if one object is there which is having a kind of roughness kind of thing, okay, so what we can say that the lesser irregularities is there, so lesser irregularities, so lesser tendency will be to lock, and then the friction as a result it will be less. Yes, it's very good. Friction will automatically be less. So the lesser the tendency to lock with another object, we can say the lesser the friction, it means lesser the tendency to oppose the motion. So it will be easier. So the first factor which we have studied was about the, yes, roughness or smoothness. Yes, I hope you will be remembering this, how the roughness or smoothness nature of the surface affects the friction. Okay. Yes, very good students. So now it's time for you to answer this fill in the blank, that the nature of the surface dash or dash affects the friction. Yes, what will come in the blanks? Here that is will come. So nature of surface, that is dash or dash affects the friction. You can write your answers in the comment section. Yes, students, meanwhile you can write the answers in your comment section. Very good. I hope you all have written it. So this will be the roughness or the smoothness. What will come in the blanks? Roughness or smoothness. So let me write also here for you. In the first it will come roughness, and in the second it will come smoothness. Let's move ahead now, students. So yes, what do you see on your screen image? Yes, a boy is trying to push the box, right? He's trying to push that box. So students, what do you think that pushing is involved over here? So first of all, tell me that is force is involved here? Force is in being applied? Yes, the force is being definitely applied because the boy is pushing it. So push or pull of an object, we term it as the force. Now students, since the box is in now the motion, okay. So what can you say about the friction? Will the friction be occurring over here or not? Yes, definitely it will be there. Friction will be there. So friction is not only when the things are at rest, like rather when they are moving. So friction acts in the as in the opposite direction. So now what we are going to study, students, related to that, what friction is there in case of the motion, that when the box is moving. So let us discuss about friction in case of motion. Okay, so the force required to overcome the friction at the instant an object start moving from the rest is a measure of the static friction, right? When an object is at rest and we are applying so much force such that it is overcoming the friction and it is starting to move from that rest, so that is what we are terming at as the static friction, right? The static friction. And on the other hand, when the force required to keep the object moving with the same speed, it is the sliding friction. Why? Because from the rest something is starting to move, it means we have overcome that friction. Yes, and the object is starting to move from the rest, so that is the measure of static friction. And when the object is already moving and we are what force which is required to keep the object moving with the same speed, that is the sliding friction. Okay. It's very good, students. So now when the box starts sliding, the contact points on its surface do not get enough time to lock into the contact points on the floor. So that is why we say that sliding friction is slightly smaller than the static friction. Yes, students. So now what do you understand by this third point? What can you infer? Yes, basically what we are saying that when the object is already in motion and then a friction kind of thing is acting on it, but it is not getting that much time so that it can lock into the points on the floor and it stops. Rather, static friction, it becomes more difficult for us. So we are saying that sliding friction is always slightly smaller than the static friction. Okay. So this point you can note down that sliding friction is less than the static friction. Also, you can note down these points also if you want. Then we will proceed further. Also, students, you can see that when one thing slides over the another, right? So we are terming that as the sliding friction, because there also motion which is opposing in the resistance of the motion. So we are terming it as the sliding friction, but with that is also slightly smaller than the static, when because it is in static it is difficult to move. Okay, so you can think a box is kept like this and one person is trying to move, so it will take some time that the box will shift slightly. But when the box is already moving and another person will also come and move that box, so what will happen? Sliding friction will be less or not? Yes, friction will be less in that case because the object is already moving. So like this we can say that how why the sliding friction is the less than the static friction. So students, you can put this in the box and note down also with the example of, you can think this always with the example of the box. Like one box is at rest and the person is pushing it, right? So this is static friction. And one box is like it is already moving, then the other person is coming and again pushing it out, like the moving object only. So this will be the less friction over here in case of the first one, right? So the friction in case of motion, you have seen that how it is acting. If I ask you to give example more the where you can say that the sliding friction is slightly smaller than the statics, and what can you think of? Yes, if you can say that there is an heavy almirah which is kept, right, and we are applying the force to it, like friction is also acting there. So the static friction is over there. But if you are think something is already sliding and what you are doing, you are again applying the force on the same motion, so the friction it is not that sufficient to stop the motion of that object. So that is relating to the sliding friction, that one when one thing slides over the another, so the opposing motion which is there, which is the sliding friction, so that is smaller than what actually it is in the case of the static, when the thing is static, right? Yes, very good students. You can note down these points. I'll give you few minutes. So now let's move ahead. I hope you all have noted down. So students, now it's your time to answer it as true or a false. That sliding friction is more than the static friction. So the statement is true or false. Yes, very good. You can write your answers in the comment section. Yes, very good students. So if you are giving answer as the false, you are absolutely correct. This statement is false. And students, why this statement is false? Yes, because just now we have seen that sliding friction is not more, it is less than the static friction, right? You can always think of the example of that box or almirah also. So students, today we have learnt about the friction, the force of friction and the factors affecting the friction, right? Let's summarize today's class now. So what is friction? If you have to define friction with the appropriate example. Yes. So friction is a kind of force which opposes the motion of an object, right? Very good. So nature of surface affects the friction. Is it true or false? Yes. The nature of surface definitely affects the friction. It is true. And what are the examples of the nature of surface which are affecting the friction? Yes, very good students. They are the roughness or the smoothness. And what is the relation between the sliding friction and the here students it will come static friction. Okay, relation between sliding and static friction, what do you think? Yes, that the sliding friction is always less than the static friction. So here you consider this as not the rolling but the static. Okay, very good. So now we have seen few activities also like the skating and the this rolling friction we are going to discuss about in our next class. So students, there is one homework for you. Question 1 is that you have to imagine that friction suddenly vanishes, so how would life be affected? Okay, you have to list out 10 situations. And then Alida runs her toy car on dry marble floor, wet marble floor, newspaper and towel spread on floor. So what is the force of friction acting on the car on different surfaces? You have to apply or arrange it in the increasing order. Okay, A B C D out of 4, which will be the increasing order. And the activity which you have to perform, students, what is that? You have to make an inclined plane. Okay, yes. And then on a table you may use a wooden board also by supported by bricks or books. Then put a mark with a pen at any point on that plane. Now let the pencil cell move down from this point, and how far does this move on the table before coming to rest? So you have to note down the distance, and what you have to do now, spread a piece of cloth over the table and make sure there are no wrinkles, okay, in the cloth. To try this activity again and then pen down your observations. What do you observe by performing these two different situations for this activity? Okay, so thank you students.